I still remember the first time I got drunk, and it was a special experience for me. I still remember the way it felt when that euphoria and that inhibition left, and when that warmth and that calmness rose. It was a white light experience for me. I was 13 years old, and my childhood effectively ended, and my relationship with alcohol began. And it was beautiful in the beginning, as far as I could tell. I didn't necessarily have some sort of heightened awareness that something was wrong, but once I got drunk for the first time, something was right. My social skills improved. My fear of others went away. My sense of joy and excitement for life, it crept up and climbed and climaxed to all-time highs just like that. And naturally, once that happened, regardless of how sick and hungover I was the following day, my first thought was, how can I do that again? When am I going to get to experience that again? And I've chased that feeling my entire life. What an incredible feeling. Why would I not want more of that? I suddenly felt okay inside of my own skin. I suddenly completely thought everything was going to be okay. It was a natural pairing. I was destined to fall in love with alcohol. From 13 to 18, my friendship with alcohol didn't damage me too much. It certainly kept me from developing in certain obvious ways, given the fact that when you drink, you are blunting and stunting emotional and maturing development. But alcohol was just this safety net. It was this guarantee that no matter what life threw at me, no matter what angst or fears or insecurities that I might deal with, or struggles or obstacles or failures or successes and wins from that range of time, middle school to high school, alcohol was there, and I knew it was there. It was the security blanket of all security blankets, because at any given time, as long as I had that, everything would wash away and everything would be okay, and I would be made anew. I loved alcohol. I grew up in a home with addicts and alcoholics for parents, good people, amazing people, actually. But addiction was in my home. And there are certain things that happen to your mind when your parents are in active addiction. And alcohol kept me from thinking about it, kept me from worrying about it. It was me and alcohol versus everything in a lot of respects. I'm dramatizing that to a degree, but not really, though, at least how I experienced it in my mind. We had a good balance, me and alcohol, for a lot of high school. I was anchored in a relationship, my high school sweetheart, that really did put some good boundaries that I didn't necessarily like at the time, but it kept me from overdoing it. But at some point after high school, it was time for me to strike out on my own. And I was excited to do so, but mostly I was excited to get even closer to alcohol, as the demands of life naturally increased, leaving the nest for the first time for me. The pressures and the stresses and all of the things that I had been suppressing for all of my childhood, from the moment I started drinking up through high school, they became more evident. It was time to be something. It was time to go somewhere. It was time to achieve and to show and to impress. There were just a lot of structures in my mind that I was trying to scale, and I was ill-prepared to do so. I hadn't readily made myself open to the next phase of my life, in my opinion. High school was this perfect bubble where I could hide where I wanted to hide. I could shine where I wanted to shine, be it athletically or or scholastically even. It was a great place to just hang out and avoid. So college came about because I thought I needed to do that. And I kind of thought it would be okay because I was going to have alcohol with me. And of course I had friends and family. But as far as this story goes, I had one primary focus. How can I get a little closer with alcohol? And again, it came through. It came through. I got drunk a lot and I felt really good when I was drunk. I wrote papers when I was drunk. I avoided worry. I was able to keep chugging along. However, in this budding toxic relationship, I started to also let certain things slip. Give up and give in a little easier to the demands of basic school. Avoid people, avoid responsibility, quit things. It became a very big trend in my life. Compromise values and morals that I hadn't even identified and put into place, but were starting to erode. I started lying more. I started calling in sick more. I started dropping classes more. I started hiding more, and alcohol was there to try and make me feel better. But I got this sense that maybe something was going wrong. Very early on, I really did. I got the sense that alcohol and me were a little out of sync, and that I probably should take a step back from alcohol, just a little bit. And so I did. And anytime I was able to gain some distance from drinking, I would get this renewed sense of self and confidence that, see, I'm okay without alcohol, but it would be better if I incorporated it back. I would find some reason that I needed to have alcohol back. Direct consequences also starting to rear its ugly head as it pertained to my alcohol consumption. I put on a bunch of weight and I barely even noticed. I got into some legal trouble as a result of being drunk. I had to work in lieu of jail because of this. I stole gas, drunk. And I convinced myself I needed to take a break again. And at 21 years old, I'd been sober for a year, but abusing Adderall. And I wasn't growing up or developing or dealing with any of the main core issues. I was just putting the plug in the jug and white knuckling it into what was supposed to be this better life. And, life didn't get that much better internally without alcohol at that time. So when I turned 21, I was like, okay, I'm going back to my friend. I don't know how to get along in this world without my best friend. One of the hardest things about getting older for me has been the realization that I'm not progressing and evolving like I think some people might be. And I become acutely aware of my shortcomings the older I get. And alcohol over time was losing its effectiveness at masking me from those things. It was so good at it when I was younger, when I had time, when there was still so much hope and potential and possibility. But as I've gotten older and I've drank more and I'm creeping into my mid-20s and I'm not doing anything or going anywhere or sensing any excitement or curiosity about my future, I needed alcohol more and more to deal with that, and it wasn't working as well as it once did. And I was becoming pretty aware of that. One thing alcohol historically has done, and then it became less effective at doing, was helping me dream. I was a drinker and a dreamer. I would drink and I would talk and I would commune with other people drinking, and we would drink and we would dream and we would get excited about the things we would do. And then I would wake up hungover and do none of them. And this ate away at me. It ate away at my sense of self. My authentic self was gone. No sense of it. And at 25 years old, I was like, okay, I need to break up with alcohol for good. It's alcohol. It's just drinking. If I just get rid of that, it's the main thing. Everything will be okay. I had some examples. My parents were sober after having battled serious addiction issues. they got sober midway through high school, and they stayed sober. And so I was like, I know there's a place to go. And so I went to rehab for the first time at 25, and I did my best to resent alcohol. I did my best to blame alcohol for everything. And then I got out of rehab, and it wasn't long before I felt naked without it again, and I missed it. And I still didn't quite feel right in my own skin. And so I remember thinking to myself, what is the point of living life without alcohol if I'm still going to be experiencing stress and depressive feelings and anxious feelings and hopelessness? I may as well be drunk. At least I had that, the devil you know. So I went back to drinking, and predictably, it stopped the bleeding, metaphorically speaking, but its effectiveness was getting weakened more the longer I drank, and the volume I would need to drink to gain the same effects was increasing as well. So my physical dependency was going up. My mental health was not improving. And I was lost in this no man's land with alcohol. I would go from this experience to the next of trying not to drink, surrendering to drinking, always with this impending sense of doom that something was wrong, I was screwed, and I resented alcohol because I couldn't live with it and I couldn't live without it. This led me to more rehab. This led me to mental breakdowns. This led me to incomprehensibly low spaces, poor decisions, terrible personal growth as far as growing into my adulthood and accepting the responsibilities of my life. Alcohol abandoned me, I guess you could say, and it left me feeling naked and angry as well. After rehab for the second time when I was 30, I came out and just tried to figure things out. I had this terrible want to figure things out myself. A struggle to just surrender that I didn't know what I was doing, and I only thought I knew what I was doing when I was drunk. And then I drank again. And then I went to rehab again for 5 months, and then I drank again. And I just decided that, okay, I was destined to be with alcohol. And so it was better to accept my fate, that even though my relationship with alcohol was not productive, even though it hurt, even though I couldn't stop, even if I wanted to, at least I could count on that fleeting relief, that artificial relief. And then I drank more and more. And before I knew it, alcohol stopped making me feel any relief. And if you've ever been there, if you're an alcoholic of my type, you know what I'm talking about. That weird realization that no matter how much I drank, I didn't feel anything like I used to feel when I was younger. None of it. My escape seemed to last 30 seconds. I couldn't drink my way through my thoughts. I couldn't drink my way through this sense that my life is wasting right before my eyes and that I'm completely useless. I couldn't get away from the chaos anymore. But I was getting older and my world was crumbling, and alcohol abandoned me. As amazing as it was when I was younger, it just abandoned me, and that scares me, and it scared me. Yeah, it's a scary place to be for an alcoholic like me. So, as broken as I'd ever been, as annoyed as I'd ever been, as physically dependent as I'd ever been, whereas in high school it was like once a week or less, to college years being 2, 3, 4 times a week, to now I'm in my mid-30s and I'm drinking every single night, 12 to 14 or more standard drinks. I'm as physically dependent as I've ever been. I'm as sick as I've ever felt. I'm as scared as I've ever been. I'm as trapped as I've ever experienced. And I realized, like I had a million times over, that I had no power or control over alcohol, and that my life had become dangerously unmanageable, and that I couldn't see any point in existing. And I surrendered. I think differently than before. I hope so, but I surrendered again. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be without alcohol. And I certainly don't know how to be with it. And I gave up. And I broke up with alcohol, like really broke up. And I decided I would just do whatever other people suggested. I would turn my faith that I once had in alcohol to something I was afraid of and I didn't understand. Call it God. Call it 12-step recovery. Call it the wisdom of the collective. Just this acute awareness that I didn't know what was best for me anymore. And I'm 5 months sober now. And I feel endlessly better. And I had to experience what I went through to get to where I'm at. And I'm glad I did. It's sometimes hard to believe I was so incredibly blind and lost, but I was. And that's okay, because I survived it. It's not the case for a lot of people, but I survived it. And I'm here with you. And I'm sober and in recovery and living differently and finally willing to admit that I don't know what's best for me. It was a really tough thing for me to admit. I just don't know what's best for me. But I do know that alcohol doesn't work anymore. And what's an alcoholic to do when the love of his life doesn't work anymore? It's like completely surrender, which is what I do one day at a time, or go crazy or die, I guess. And I don't want that. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm glad that alcohol is gone, and I'm glad that I'm getting to know me. And I'm glad that I didn't give up, and I'm glad that people didn't give up on me. And I'm thankful for my struggle. It is a privilege of those who survive their addiction. I get to be thankful for the pain it caused and the pain I caused myself. And I get to grow up. And I get to realize that while alcohol had its place in my life, it's no longer serving me. It hasn't for a long time, and it's time to grow up. It's time to assume responsibility for my life. It's time to get curious about my life again. It's time to learn how to care for other people. It's time. It feels like it. It really does. And I'm so glad. I feel so good. I can't even believe how good I feel in comparison. So I'm 5 months sober, one day at a time. And I let that be known so that if there's anyone out there like me who has gotten their ass proverbially kicked by substance over and over again and doesn't think there's a chance in hell that they could get sober, stay sober, and want to be sober, I'm here to prove that it can be done. We can be sober. We can have a good life. We can have hope. We can want to grow again. We can tap into our inner child again. We can be curious about life again. There's more to life. Who knew? Go figure. Didn't really know what I wanted to talk about, but I didn't want to let this little milestone go by without checking in. Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for listening to me. I like to talk out my thoughts and experiences and feelings with you guys. My favorite thing about YouTube is that I get to share my life and catalog my experiences. And if you've been around for any length of time, you've seen the gamut of that. We're in a good place today. I hope you are too. I don't regret the past, nor I wish to shut the door on it. I want to learn from my past and remember exactly where I came from and remember the suffering that I endured and the suffering that I put on others to get here, just to get to a place of humility, as much as I can muster on a day-to-day basis, to be free. Today I get to be free. I didn't know it at the time, and it wasn't my fault. I was just a kid, but I was handcuffing myself permanently. When I first drank alcohol, I handcuffed myself. I turned myself over to alcohol when I was 13. And that was a long, tumultuous relationship that came to a brutal end. So here's to moving on from toxic relationships. Here's to the future. If you're doing well, that's amazing. I am a huge proponent of encouraging and supporting and celebrating people doing well. Life throws some incredibly difficult things at us. So good for you. Good for you. It's awesome. And I'm so happy for me for doing well today. If you're not doing well, be brave. My experiences told me that these things can pass, and they will pass, assuming you don't give up. And ideally, in my experience, ask for help, and then ask for it again, and then ask for it again until you get what you need. I think those suffering are fighting for their future selves, and your future self just wants you to be brave and hold on. I'm so glad I was. I'm so glad I didn't give up. I am tickled pink with how much I'm enjoying just being alive. And I hated existence for a very long time because I was just trapped. I feel like a zombie trapped, and I'm just not anymore. And it's wild. It's a wild, wild experience. If you're still here, just know that if any of you ever want to talk, first link in my description is my Setmore. You can schedule a time to talk with me. It's a paid service. It helps support me, my family. But I'd love to hold space with you and reflect with you and chat about anything that's on your mind. It's one of my favorite things to do. All right. Thank you for letting me share. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please feel free to check in the comment section, anything that's on your mind. I love to hear from you guys.